Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a Halloween decoration. Well, I know that Halloween is quite some time away, but that doesn't mean that you can't get some decorations done. And what better time to do it than in the spring, winter, that sort of thing, when the outdoor activities are a little lacking. So this one here is actually a statue, and we need to make it so that's collapsible. But the whole thing starts with a piece of 2x4. Well, what I have here is an old 5-gallon pail. It used to be a garbage can in my shop, but it's since been replaced, and now it will be repurposed as the base for our statue. So this will be actually filled with concrete, but I have a piece of 2x4 here that is approximately 2 feet long. It doesn't matter the length as long as it extends outside of the bucket. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this entire piece of 2x4 with plastic wrap, and once I get that done, I'm going to coat it with Vaseline. So we're going to be generous with this Vaseline, and the reason we're putting Vaseline on here is this piece of 2x4 is going to be sunk into concrete, and we do not want the 2x4 sticking in the concrete. So we'll coat this with Vaseline, and that will prevent it from sticking. So what I've done is I've got some quick mix concrete, and I've mixed up one bag, and we're going to place a little bit here in our bucket. And now we can sink our 2x4 into that, but we want to make sure we offset it, and I'll show you why. Well, the reason you want to offset it is so that you will still be able to use the handle of your bucket. So make sure you put it to the back so that your handle is still usable. And then surround it with the rest of your concrete. And with that done now, before it sets up, level it up, make sure you can still use the handle of your bucket, and put it aside to set for at least 24 hours. Well, at this point now, you want to decide how tall I don't even know what you call this. You know what? I'm going to call it a Grim Reaper, just because that's what I think it's going to look like at the end. But you want to decide how tall you want this creature to be. And for me, I want it to be about 5'8". So I have cut, which just so happens to be the same height as my wife. So anyway, I have cut a piece of 2x4 to be 5 feet 8 inches long, and we need to mount our little skull that we saw earlier in the show on it. So I picked up this skull from a craft store. It was on clearance for like 50% off. So we need to mount this up here on our 2x4. We kind of want it to be a little bit forward, and we also want it to be facing just a little bit down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it roughly in the position that I want. We're going to mark out a hole in the back or in the underside of our skull, and I'm going to cut an access hole to make it so that we can slide it down over our 2x4. So with the hole cut in our skull, this will mount something like that. And we will eventually screw it into place, but for now we need to move on and make the shoulders. So in order to make the shoulder pieces, I'm going to need a piece of 2x4 that is 16.5 inches long. Well, I've drawn a line on our piece of 2x4 that is 7.25 inches in from one end, and that will actually be where it mounts on our 2x4 upright. I've also placed a mark that is at 1 3/4 of an inch over and drawn a square line. This is where we are going to add a threaded insert. As well, we are going to place 2 1/2-inch dowels. So I'm going to drill a couple holes, sink in our 1/2-inch dowels, and place our threaded insert in, and then I'm going to come back and see you and show you what it is that we've got here. So this is what we're looking at now. I have 2 1/2-inch holes drilled at 3/4 of an inch in from either side of our 2x4. I have a 5/16 diameter through hole drilled right there in the middle, and then on the back I've hammered in a threaded insert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place some dowel centers. You've seen me use these on the show before. We're going to place them right in those 1/2-inch holes. I've drilled a 5/16 hole where I want my shoulder to be, and I have here a 1/4-20 threaded bolt, which is the same thread count as my insert. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to place my bolt through this hole into the threaded insert. We're just going to start to screw it in. You don't want to go all the way. We're going to get a square on here. Let's remove the head. We're going to get a square on here to make sure that the shoulders are square to the body. Once you're happy with that alignment, we're just going to screw this in place, and those dowel centers are going to mark the position for our 1/2-inch holes. And we should have on the back 2 perfect marks that match our holes in the other piece. So what I'm going to do is drill another 3/4-inch deep, 1/2-inch diameter hole, and then we're going to cut some 1.5-inch long 1/2-inch diameter dowels. So with those 2 1/2-inch diameter, 3/4-inch deep holes drilled in our upright piece, we have 2 pieces of 1/2-inch diameter dowel. They're 1.5 inches long. We're going to glue them into our shoulder piece. Once we get them glued in here, they will be like registration pins, and they will just sit in just like that. And then our 1/4-20 bolt from the other side with a washer will screw it into place and keep it from moving. Now, this, what I've shown you here, is going to be the typical joint for the rest of this project. So when I mention that you can drill in your dowels and your threaded insert, that is what I'm talking about, because we do need this to be able to be taken apart. So I'm going to unbolt this now and glue in those dowels, and then we can move on to the next step. Now the shoulders are actually uneven here, and they're done like that on purpose. This left shoulder actually sticks out 1.5 inches beyond what this one does. And the reason for that is so that we can put an arm piece on this side. So what I want to do is the same way that we did the shoulder joint, I want to make this arm piece so that it kind of looks like this. It's going to be holding, well, you'll see after. But what I want to do is I'm going to lay this out the way that I think it should be, and I'm going to do the same dowel joints, screwing the whole thing together temporarily with threaded inserts until I have it the way that I want it. Now that was our elbow joint, and now we're going to do the same thing for our upper shoulder. The only difference here for the shoulder is that instead of one of these inserts where we hammer it in, it's going to be one that screws in order to hold it in place. I will also say that the longer piece here is the forearm piece. So I'm going to attach the shoulder, and when I get that done, I'm going to come back and show you where we're at so far. So I know this looks a little strange, but we're getting there, honest. Once we get it all covered, it's going to look great. So The next thing I want to do is I have this eye bolt. I want to thread it in right to the end here, screw it all the way in, and then I'm going to get a pair of pliers and open it up just a little bit. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can just use a hook and put it in the end, and that's gonna hang something pretty cool a little later. I'll show you that when we get there. I guess the next thing we can do is we can drill down through our head and place a couple of number 8 screws in the top of his head to hold the skull in place. Ouch. Well, the next thing that we need here is a canvas drop cloth. And I just picked this up from the big box store in my area. It's 9 feet by 12 feet. So what I want to do is along the 12-foot length, I want to cut 3 sections that are 2 feet wide, and then whatever is left over, we will use it for the rest of it. So I'm going to cut that up, and I'm going to come back and show you what we need to do with this. Well, here we are the next day. The concrete is pretty much set, and now comes the fun part. I have to get this 2x4 out of here. Now, hopefully, if all went well, that Vaseline and the plastic wrap did its job, and this should release out of here. But let's see how it goes. Oh, it's coming. Let's get my foot up on here. Whew. That's no easy task, but it is coming out. There we go. Whew. All right. Let's take our plastic wrap out of there, and now we have, here, you know what, let me change the camera and I'll show you what we're looking at now. And there we have a nice little setting, I guess we'll call it, that our 2x4 for our statue can go into. So let's sink our actual statue into this, and I'll show you what we're gonna do next. So one thing that the plastic wrap does, other than keep the Vaseline from soaking into your 2x4 and allowing it to separate, it makes the hole a little larger than the 2x4 so that it makes it a little easier to sink our Grim Reaper here into. So I'm going to add his shoulders and his arm piece, and then I'll show you what we did with all of that material, that canvas drop cloth. Well, now in 2 of our 2-foot wide canvas pieces, I have cut a hole right in the middle. I don't know if you can see that, and that is to allow our guy's head to go through. So the first thing we want to do is from left to right, just like this, we're going to place one of our 2-foot strips of material right over our Grim Reaper's head. Now, I have also, if you can see this here, I've painted his neck black because I didn't want it to show. So you want to arrange the material so it comes up just like that, and it will be under his arm. Something like that. Now our next piece that will be added is going to be our offcut. If you remember, we cut 3 2-foot lengths, and we had one piece at the end that would be left over, and that's going to be for his sleeve. So what we're going to do is drape it over just like this so that it hangs down over his hand, and bring it up to his shoulder up here, just like this. All right, just like that. Now, what I'm going to end up doing is at his arm up here, I'm going to be placing a Velcro piece. Once I get the materials situated the way I want, I'll be placing the hook section of the Velcro on the 2x4, and I will sew the loop section of the Velcro onto the material of his arm. So anyway, there is his sleeve in place. And now you need that other 2-foot section with the hole in it. So this next section, where we went front to back with the first one, this one here is going to go side to side to close in this cloak. just like this. So down over his head, just like this. And then that will drape over, we'll center it. It will drape over his back, just like that, and over his front, just like a cloak. And now the very last piece that you're going to need, well, it's the last 2-foot piece, and this will be his hood. So what we're going to do is drape this over our Grim Reaper, just like this, with the seam there in the center line right in the middle, just like that. Now this as well, I am going to use a piece of Velcro both on the skull and on the material in order to keep it in place. And there is one more thing that I want to add. I have to go get it. I'll be right back. So the very last piece that we want to add to our Halloween decoration. Check this out. Okay, so if you remember a while back on the show, I converted this old oil lamp to an electric and I put an LED flame bulb in it. And there isn't too much that's done on my show without some kind of thought process. And this is the perfect accessory for this Halloween decoration. This lamp actually sits on my roll top desk and I like to have it on at night. It just gives a nice yellow glow while I'm working. And I thought this would be the perfect addition to this project for him to hold this oil lamp. So there's still more to do here, but before I can do much of anything else, where we have cut this fabric, it's really frayed, or it's starting to fray, and I fully expected that. So I'm going to have to take this inside. I'm going to use my wife's sewing machine. We're going to fold over a hem, and I'm going to hem the entire cut edges of each one of these pieces just to keep them from fraying anymore. And once I get that done, there's one more thing I want to do to this project. Well, on all the cut edges, I've finished all of the hemming, and what I've done for the holes around the neck is I've just done a simple zigzag stitch all the way around to keep it so that it'll fray, but it'll only fray up to that zigzag stitch and then it will stop there. So the next thing that I want to do is give this a little color. So what I have is 3 gallons of water in this pail along with some salt and some dish soap. Now this is the directions for this particular dye. I would check the type of dye that you are using and make sure that you're doing it as per their directions. So I'm using black dye, and I'm just going to place this in here. And the next thing I want to do is take our material, which I've already wet, and I'm only using 2 pieces here just to give it room in the bucket, and we're just going to place them in here, and then I have to stir this for 30 minutes in order to get them to dye black. I kind of figure they're going to come out gray, and that's actually what I'm hoping for. So I'm going to mix up a second batch of this, get the other 2 pieces of material dyeing in here, and once I've got them dyed, rinsed, and then cleaned and dried, I'll come back and I'll see you. Well, after all of the dyeing and the washing and the drying, and then I had to iron it, this is what we end up with. Look at that color. That is awesome. It came out this nice kind of a sky gray, kind of a dirty gray, and I think it's going to look great on our Grim Reaper statue, but let's get it on him and see how it looks. Oh my, this is looking awesome. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to do, and that is I don't like all of this plain gray fabric. As much as I love the color, I'm not a fan of the solid one tone of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this outside, and just in the folds in certain areas, I'm going to blast it with some flat black spray paint just to dirty it up and give it a little bit of like an old dirty look, if you know what I mean. So once I get that done, the very last thing that I want to do is I want to attach that Velcro that I told you about. So I'm going to adhere a piece of Velcro here to the top of his skull, and then sew its mating piece onto the hood to hold his hood in place. And I'm going to do the same thing with his sleeve here. And once I get that Velcro piece on there and the spray painting, I'll come back and see ya and show you what I ended up with. Now let me just show you what I've done to accommodate the storage. The shoulder piece, I've actually drilled some holes here into our spine in such a way that they line up and allow us to store our piece flush with our dowels sitting right down inside here. Our forearm piece gets mounted right here. On the back of our board, I have put another threaded insert. I don't know if you can see that there, but we have another threaded insert. So all I want to do is line these up just like this. Just one. These ones here will come from the other side and screw into our insert. And then this one here, same thing. And everything is stored now and ready to be put away. Takes up as little room as possible and keeps everything together, including all the hardware for when you need it next season. And there you have it. A Halloween Grim Reaper statue yard decoration type thingy. Guys, Halloween for me is a load of fun. My wife and I love the whole concept. We do a large display in our yard and have a lot of fun with it. Everything from graveyards to myself on stilts with a Grim Reaper costume on, up to Dracula on the roof, skeletons everywhere. We have a ton of fun, and now this year, this is going to be awesome in the front yard as well. You know, just because Halloween is a few months away doesn't mean that you can't prepare. And really, this didn't take that much to put together. It's all just a bucket, some cement, a couple lengths of 2x4, a plastic head, and a tarp. That is it. That's all there is in this. The lamp I already had, and I just incorporated it into my design. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that. Why not, if you wanted to, why not put the arm out and make one of those sickle things or scythe or whatever they are that the Grim Reaper carries. Make one of those for it to hold instead of the lantern if the lantern is not your thing. But for me, I love this idea and I love the lantern, and this is going to be a great addition when Halloween rolls around again. Now, truth be told, I did measure my wife for these dimensions because I wanted it to be about 5'8", and I wanted the dimensions between the joints of the arms to be right, as well as the width of the shoulders. So I actually measured my wife's arm with her in a pose. That way I got the proper measurements. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you want it taller or whatever, get a tall person to measure, or just make up your own measurements. You have to remember, this is fantasy. This is fun. There are no guidelines as to what you do. There's no magic formula as to how to put it together. The one thing I love about this entire project is the storage. And I showed you how it all bolts together in one streamlined effect, and it can just go up in the attic of my shop and then be brought out again later on. The bucket of concrete, you know what? I can sit it behind my shed and not worry about it flip it upside down and leave it. What's going to hurt a bucket of concrete? Absolutely nothing. So storage options are really great for this. And guys, it's a lot of fun. It's a great project, and if you love Halloween, you have to try it, honestly, because I think it looks absolutely fantastic.
Me too.
Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click that bell so that you don't miss notifications of future episodes of the show. This one's been an absolute blast. I loved every bit of it, from the sewing machine to the dyeing the material to the 2x4 to the painting. I loved it all. It was just a blast. I hope you had fun with it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're going to try it for yourself. And honestly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.